a disastrous wedding, a creepy mansion, monstrous creatures. The time has finally come to talk about some awesome and not so awesome books released in 2020. So here we go. Cue the intro. But there's no intro? Okay, well, fuck it. What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in. My name is Michael, and boy do I have some booze for you today. Now, I read 4.5 of these books last year and finished the other 1.5 last month. Now, full disclosure, I'm not the fastest reader in the world, and it's been a pretty bad reading year for me. But that's part of the reason I wanted to start this channel, is to help keep me motivated and keep on turning those pages. Now, a fantastic reading month for me would be 4 books, but I do want to try to get through as many 2020 releases as I can, because I had like 54, 55 books on my list to get, which included horror and thriller, and some young adult, and maybe a couple of sci-fi, before moving on to the 2021 arrivals. Now, I do realize 2021 is almost halfway over, but there's no rule that says I have to read new releases as soon as they come out, right? So I'll be ranking these books from the ones I enjoyed the least to one I absolutely loved. But before we get started, I have an honorable mention to discuss that won't be ranked, but since it was a 2020 publication, I can't not talk about it. And that is The Meaning of Mariah Carey by Mariah Carey and Michaela Angela Davis. This was released on September 29th by Andy Cohen Books, and it is an autobiography about the fabulous Mariah Carey. Now, I've been a lamb from the beginning, ever since she burst onto the scene in 1990. I've always followed her career and all the gossip and all the drama. You know, everyone thinks that she's just this high-class diva, but it took her a long time to reach that status. Now, I don't believe you have to be a huge mega fan to enjoy this book if you enjoy reading about celebrities at all. If you're a casual fan, I think you'll get something out of this. It's broken up into 4 parts. The first part is all about her childhood, how she grew up in a mixed family, how she dealt with racism from her friends, her co-workers, even her family members. I mean, it gets really deep into all aspects of that. Part 2 discusses her career in the 90s and her relationship with her manager turned husband, Tommy Mottola, and all the drama that ensued with that. Part 3 is about the glitter era and her breakdown, you know, told from her perspective. And part 4, we get the emancipation era, with a little insight into her family, her pregnancy, and her marriage to Nick Cannon. If you're a Mariah fan, I know you've probably already read this, but if not, get to it. It's Mariah Carey. Can't beat that. Now it's time to rank 6 2020 books. Here we go. So coming in at number 6 for me is a thriller I was really looking forward to reading. I mean, it was on top of all the charts and created a lot of buzz, and that is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This was published by William Morrow on February 20th and is 313 pages long. Now, this is a story that is set on an island off the coast of Ireland, where guests have gathered to celebrate the wedding of a young power couple. Jules, the bride, is a bigwig in the publishing industry, while Will, the groom, is an up-and-coming famous TV star. The story begins at their wedding reception. Immediately, the lights go out, causing a commotion, and then a scream carries over the wind. The story then unfolds from 5 different perspectives. Jules' younger sister Olivia, Will's best man Jono, Jules' best friend's wife Hannah, and the wedding planner Aif. And then it jumps back and forth between present day and the day before the wedding when the guests arrive. It becomes apparent very early on who dies, although it's not revealed until much, much later in the story, like almost the very end. The characters aren't very likable except for Hannah, and it's pretty obvious who the killer is even before the story is halfway over, which I could forgive if it had been a little more engaging. So overall, guys, I gotta give the guest list a boo for just being kind of boring. I wasn't thrilled or excited by any of the revelations. There was no real excitement, and what's more, I found one of the revelations, aka motives, to be rather convenient. I think there are much better thrillers out there, so I would save your time and money and not RSVP to this wedding. Number 5 is the long-awaited sequel, but was it really? To Bird Box, and that is Mallory by Josh Malerman. Wait, Mallory? Malerman? This was published by Del Rey on July 21st and comes in at 291 pages long. After I read Bird Box at the end of last year, I immediately jumped into Mallory. Now, this may be a spoiler for those who haven't read Bird Box or seen the movie, but at the end of that story, Mallory and her 2 children make it to the safety of the Jane Tucker School for the Blind. They have lived there harmoniously for the past 2 years, but at the beginning of the sequel, there's a breach, and once again, she and the children have to escape and be on their own. We then flash forward 10 years. The kids are now 16, and they are all living in an abandoned campground. One day, a census man comes knocking on their door. Mallory refuses him entry, but her son Tom is yearning to meet other people, to get out and explore the world, and to test his own inventions. His sister Olympia is the level-headed one who is always following the rules and tries to keep the peace between her mother and her brother. The census man leaves behind some papers for them to read, and Mallory discovers that someone she thought once dead may still be alive. She then makes a decision, one she never thought she would make, and that is to venture out into the world and risk their own lives to find out for sure. So I gotta be honest, I stopped reading this back in December, about halfway through the book, and I didn't pick it up again, or any book for that matter, until last month. So Mallory is not a horror book like Bird Box. It is more of a thriller / survivalist story, which is fine, but it's just not what I was expecting considering Bird Box was such an intriguing, horrific story. It was totally engaging, totally frightening, but Mallory, it was okay. The climax was lackluster and the ending felt rushed, but overall it was an okay story. If you loved Bird Box and just have to know how the story continues, then by all means get out your blindfold and go for it, but just don't expect it to live up to its predecessor. The number 4 spot goes to a book that was on everybody's radar last year, and that is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Now, this was published by Quirk on April 7th and is 408 pages long. Now, this is a story about a housewife who joins her neighborhood book club. They form a friendship, but then the main character, Patricia, who is, an everyday housewife and mother back in the late 80s, she gets attacked one night while taking out the garbage by an old woman who, that scene, if you know it, you know, that deserves a boo for being quite creepy, quite gross, but totally badass. After the attack, Patricia meets James Harris, who is the old woman's nephew and is new in town. Well, they quickly form a friendship of sorts, but she soon discovers that he might not be who he says he is. When some children in a neighboring town go missing, Patricia quickly suspects James may be the culprit. She tries to get her book club involved, and then things just escalate from there. Now, I know so many people love this book, and it was a pretty good book. I'll give it that. I was intrigued, but I did have a few issues with it. I was under the impression before reading this that the women would all be smart-ass bitches. I don't know, I'm from the South. I kind of know how it works. No offense, my Southern ladies, I love ya. But these women were mostly submissive to their husbands, And it seemed like it was just meant to be a 1950s story instead of 1980s or 90s. But Patricia, she had some backbone to her, and she was a pretty good main character. I also felt that this story was a little too long. I think it could have been a tighter story if it had been about 100 pages less, and it would have been way more effective for me personally. But the main issue I have with this story, and this is going to be a spoiler, so if you have not read Slaying Vampires, please fast forward until you do not see the word spoiler at the bottom. Please, I beg you. But if you have read it, then hear me out. Okay, ready? My main gripe with the Southern Book Club's guide to Slaying Vampires is that James Harris is not a freaking vampire. What? How are you going to title a book about slaying vampires when the dude is not a fucking vampire? Are you kidding me? He's some other kind of creature that sucks blood, not for sustenance, but he somehow has to clean his blood. And then he gets these people that he's sucking on addicted to him, and then they end up killing themselves. No. You see those little bite marks on that peach? Or is that an orange? I don't know. What the fuck ever. It's not a fucking vampire. He didn't have fangs. He had this big long ass tongue that came out of his gaping jaws. I don't know. It just really brought it down for me. I mean, the dude even says he's not a vampire. I'm not a vampire. Don't kill me. I don't have fucking fangs. Fuck ever. Grady Hendrix. But on the positive side, it did have a lot of tense moments, and I'm definitely giving it a boo for a scene in the beginning of the story that involves rats. And if you know, you know. So overall, guys, it's a decent story, despite its flaws. I just wish I had been given what was promised. But let's move on. Coming in at number 3 is a story I had to briefly revisit in order to remember much about it, but once I did, it moved up a few spots, and that is The Hollow Ones by Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Hogan. Now this was released on August 4th by Grand Central Publishing and is 325 pages long. Now this is a detective horror story, and it follows FBI agent Odessa Hardwick, who in the beginning is having a late dinner with her partner Leppo, and they are dispatched to a house to where a man they are investigating is attacking his family. By the time they get there, the guy has already killed his wife and 2 of the kids. The partner rushes upstairs before Odessa, and by the time she gets up there, they are struggling in the hallway, and it is Leppo that has a butcher knife instead of the suspect. And it seems like the suspect is really scared and freaking out and doesn't know what's going on. Well, Odessa has to make a decision, and she ends up putting the man down. So then her partner goes into the bedroom and attacks the remaining young daughter, and Odessa doesn't know what is going on. She's like, Leppo, what are you doing? Well, Odessa has to shoot Leppo. It's not a very big spoiler. Don't worry about it. But as she does, and after Leppo dies, she sees this kind of mist arise from his body and releases some kind of odor, a sulfuric odor or something like that. And she doesn't know what that's all about. And she doesn't recount that to the FBI, who question her about a possible bad shooting. So she is assigned to cleaning out the office of a retired agent named Solomon, who happens to be from my hometown. Solomon is in the hospital. He's not doing well, and she goes to see him to bring him some of his things and asks him some questions. And then we get Solomon's backstory from 1962 in the Mississippi Delta, when he first discovers similar goings-ons, and he comes across a man named John Blackwood. Well, he gives Odessa instructions in the present day in order to contact Mr. Blackwood, in order to help her figure out the mysteries of what's going on, because not only did it involve her partner, but there are other strange, erratic killings going on in New Jersey. This was a pretty good story. It had some gruesome moments as the Hollow One wreaks havoc across the city, and as you can see, well, I don't know if you can see by the title, but it is called The Blackwood Tapes Volume 1, so I'm sure there will be a sequel. I'm just not sure if I'm going to be reading that if and when it comes out, but I guess we'll see when the time comes. So I would definitely recommend this one if you are a fan of horror with a mix of police procedurals, FBI detective stories. It's pretty decent. Check it out. The Hollow Ones. Number 2 is a story about a young socialite who goes to check on her cousin in the outskirts of Mexico City. I wonder what that could be. You guessed it, Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This was published by Del Rey on June 30th and is 301 pages long. Now, this story is set in the 1950s in Mexico City, where a young cocktail-going debutante named Noemi Tabado is asked to go check on her cousin, who is recently married, and something doesn't add up. She's not acting like herself. Something's wrong. So Noemi travels to a place called High Place on top of a mountain. It's a creepy mansion. The in-laws are kind of bizarre, standoffish, controlling, neat freaks. When Noemi asks to see her cousin, they make excuses as to why she can't, but she ain't having that. You can't tell her what to do. So she insists, and she sees her cousin, who is okay. She's a little under the weather, but something's not right in High Place with the actual mansion itself too. Just being there is giving Noemi nightmares. Something is definitely wrong. I don't think I need to say any more. You know all about this story. But I just want to take a minute and appreciate this cover. It's initially what drew me to this. I mean, look at it. Beautiful. I think it wins best cover of 2020. I just love it. It's fabulous, darling. Now, I've never read a Gothic story before, so I didn't know exactly what to expect. Yes, it is a little slow in the beginning, but it's a Gothic story, and it's a typical Gothic story from what I hear, and it's supposed to be that way. The writing felt as rich as this cover. I mean, it just oozed elegance, and I haven't read anything like that in quite a long time, if ever. Silvia definitely wove a great tale, and I believe this is going to be turned into a movie or a miniseries or something on Hulu at some point, so I can't wait to check that out. This story does get a boo for me for one scene that involves black ooze, and if you know, you know. Totally gross. If you love Gothic stories, you will definitely love Mexican Gothic. So check it out. I dare you. But my absolute favorite of this bunch by a landslide is actually going to be Devolution by Max Brooks. This was published by Del Rey, the third Del Rey book on this list, on June 16th, and is 282 pages long, I think. This is an epistolary story, meaning it's told via journal entries, newsletters, articles, police interviews, which was new to me, but it works so well for this story. I hear Brooks's other novel, World War Z, is told in a similar fashion. I would love to check that one out. Maybe I'll get to that eventually. The story begins with Max Brooks, having written himself into the story, meeting with the main character's brother, who has reached out to Brooks in order to get his sister's journals published. Okay. And he wants to expose the truth about Bigfoot. It's real.
Oh, Jay.
Yes. So right off the bat, we know that our main character is missing after the events of the eruption and the massacre. But it doesn't take anything away from the urgency of this story. It keeps you on the edge of your seat, darling. So Kate Holland and her husband are new residents at an eco-community called Green Loop, which is a few miles south of Mount Rainier. They're only there for about a week before the volcano erupts, cutting off their only viable means of getting out of there. And it's not long after that they start hearing howls in the night. Not quite animal, not quite human. Pretty soon, a clan of Bigfoot, Big Feet? A clan of Sasquatch invade the little community, and an all-out, blood-soaked war begins between the humans and the Big Feet, Bigfoot, Sasquatch. Oh Lord, this was fabulous. My kind. I think creatures are my favorite subgenre of horror, and this delivered in spades. It was so good, so gory. Definitely gets the biggest, creepiest boo on this list. If you are into creature features, survivalists, stories, Bigfoot. Read. Go out and buy this today. Download it on Kindle. Whatever your favorite means of reading is, do it. Do it. I beg you. So good. So good. I loved it. So what did you guys think of these stories? Which ones did you love? Which ones bored you to tears? Which ones haven't you read that you want to read? Let me know down in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe, like, comment, share, all the YouTube things you're supposed to do. And come back and see me next time as I talk about 4 other 2020 books I currently have but still need to read. Which ones will they be? Keep turning those pages and come back and see me next time. Bye now.